Welcome to the Hardtech podcast.
Davide, welcome to the Hardtech podcast. Everybody, I'm your host, DeAndre Hericus. For the second episode in a row, Grant will not be joining us. He is currently out of office. But this is an awesome conversation. I've been looking forward to it. I've known Davide for a little over a year now. You're deep in the world of Indianapolis, in the world of the startups and so forth. I would love for you just to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me, DeAndre. I'm Davide, and my motto is like from Napoli to Indianapolis. So as you can hear from my weird accent, I'm Italian. My name is an interesting E at the end of the usual Davide that you always hear in Indiana in the Midwest. So yeah, I'm very glad to be here. I think it's a way kind of to celebrate my third year in this amazing city, Indianapolis, in this amazing ecosystem, the Midwest. So glad to be here with you.
Absolutely. So whenever you were in Italy, were you also in the startup space, or what were you doing before you joined gBETA?
Very, very interestingly, I never worked in Italy. So in Italy, I was just like a simple student, overwhelmed by books, by theory. In Italy, it's very, very theoretical, the way you approach the world. And so I think there is talk about startups and workforce. I think in Italy, unfortunately, there is kind of a skill gap between what the workforce requires, so what employers require, versus actually the skills that you teach school, because it's very theoretical. So in Italy, I was just a student.
Nice. And so what actually brought you whenever you moved from Italy to the U.S., did you go directly to Indianapolis? Was that your first stop, or where did you go along the way?
So there was kind of some steps between Italy and the U.S. So I did this very theoretical study in Italy about business, but like studying from books, studying frameworks, which sometimes I bring those frameworks in my day-to-day life. Sometimes my friends say, hey, stop talking about business. We are just humans. So I studied in Italy. Then I did my master's degree in France, and that's where my worldly view opened up. I did the master in France, and I've studied in both Madrid and London because it was a multi-campus experience. And then they offered me the opportunity to have a double master's degree in the US. And this master's degree also allowed me to do some work experience within the master. So I worked for Kraft Heinz, which is this big CPG food production company.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Ketchup and mustard, man.
Yeah.
If you grew up here in Indianapolis, you definitely had some hot dogs with some Heinz.
Yeah, happy to. I don't know if, like, I was working in procurement, so I was actually like helping to purchase those materials, streamlining the tenders, so that like the buyers could actually finalize those purchases at a big scale. I don't know if it was only serving Europe or worldwide. So I don't know if the eggs and the tomato that I purchased also was served on your table or only on European table. So I need to double check that.
No worries, man. Well, the goal of today is really, I would love to learn more about what you guys are doing at gBETA or Generator broadly. So I'd love you to dive into the company at large. For background for those listening, I was a startup founder. I got my start going through it. I think I was the first or second gBETA cohort led by Sarah Aubrey, who was great.
Okay.
And learned how to put together a pitch deck. And I still use the same lessons I learned in that initial startup accelerator or incubator program as I'm teaching other founders on how to raise capital, how to structure your pitch deck, executive summary, et cetera. So I'd just love to get a kind of more broader view of what is Generator, what is gBETA, and what are you guys doing here in Indy?
Yeah. So as kind of to give the segue with my story, I studied 2 years in South Carolina, and then I moved to Indiana for Generator. And like Generator actually was also present in South Carolina when I started like to look for jobs. So that's a good way to say that Generator is present in 50 plus communities in the US. We have over 400 accelerators, and we have both free accelerators called gBETA and also invest accelerators, which actually give give investment, and we take some equity. The gBETA, which is the former product I mentioned, is fully free. There is no fee, no equity, because basically the the economic development corporations and other funders pay us to provide the program for free to founders. And so we are lucky in Indiana to have the Indiana Economic Development Corporation that for a lot of years has allowed us to serve founders in Indiana. I'm super glad that you mentioned Sarah Aubrey, Jeff Zentz, Doug Applegate. They were the first ones that kind of started us in Indiana. And then now, like, we have our local team, me, Ty Choker, Camilo Lozano, Emil, Abby. So kind of very happy to provide support to founders. And as I said, it's free, no fee, no equity. And it's a 7-week program where we try to kind of connect them with local stakeholders, mentors, investors, ecosystem partners such as Glassboard. And also we try to give them some know-how on how to approach customers and investors and how to effectively communicate with them the ROI, return on investment to investors, and ROP, return on purchase for customers.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I think the work that you guys do at gBETA truly, like, if I really were to look back, it transformed who I was as a founder.
I appreciate that.
Right? So any like early stage founder looking to, get their start, right? You have this really interesting product idea. Maybe you're coming from industry. Maybe you're coming right out of college, which is where I was. I think I was still in college. Actually, I was in college when I went through it. But just kind of getting the foundations of what it means to be a founder, right? And I went through that process. But funny enough, I think I can tell this story now. I've been quite quiet about it. So funny enough, with All In, we originally went through the gBETA program. We ended up raising like $350K out of that. We went on, we raised another $400K, then we were kind of on growth mode, then we're going out for an $800K round. And within that round, we actually applied for the Las Vegas accelerator generator program and got in.
Wow.
But we had one problem. Our current investors on the cap table were not happy on like the 6% common equity or whatever the common equity split was for generator at the time. And so we got in, accepted, and I think we're like less than a week or two out. And again, this was like I felt so bad, and I think I could talk about it now today and hopefully laugh about it. We had to turn it down. We had to we hadn't signed paperwork, but we were there. We were already going there. And we had to say no to going to like the proper investment accelerator. But it is cool how you can bring a company in, you can give them the foundations, you can get them networked, give them mentors, give them access to service providers or connections to advisors who will eventually potentially become investors, or also just investors like at Demo Day, for example. Give them all the tools they need to start being successful. It's on the onus of the founder to take that and leverage it. But then also you have that next step up with the generator accelerator programs that actually invest 100, 120K, whatever it is today, into the company. I think it's amazing. It really is that full roadmap. And the fact that you guys have partnered with the economic development corporations to bring that to founders all around the country is incredible. So I'm curious on your side, one, what are some really interesting startups that you've worked with? And two, do you have any upcoming programs that a startup founder could look at joining in the near future?
Yeah. And I love to hear kind of your journey at Generator, and you were kind of transitioning from the free accelerator into the investment accelerator. I usually say that our gBETA is kind of like is building the car, like the fundamentals of that car, and like learning how to start driving, and then the investment accelerator is like putting fuel in the car and going 100 miles an hour, which I don't know exactly how it translates because in my brain is like kilometers an hour. So
it's pretty fast. Yeah.
Okay.
It's still pretty fast.
Let's say 100
kilometers an hour. You'll get pulled over if you're going 100 miles an hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm curious, your question for it, how, I know you serve lots of founders, so how your definition of founder has evolved when you were a founder, so firsthand versus now that you are more kind of seeing all those founders entering the doors of Glassboard. I don't know if you want to cover it now or later, but that's something that what you say about you being a founder, the question came to mind, so I'm curious.
No, totally. So basically the question is, how has my perspective on being a founder changed from both when I started to where I got to with All In, and then ultimately now being more on the side where I'm having conversations with hundreds of founders in a given quarter, and what's been my perspective?
Exactly, yeah.
I think the biggest piece of it was when I first started All In, I'm a junior in college. Right, I don't know a thing about anything. The term entrepreneur had never been in my lexicon, and like fundraising and pitch decks. Like that was like I didn't even understand that, right? So I was just really, really green. But fast forward, like you go through a gBETA program, you start to get your initial checks, and you start to kind of understand what it means to be successful in the world of startups. And I think the number one thing I focused on was just learning, right? And not just learning on how to, raise money, but more importantly, like you learn that you have to constantly be having conversations with your customers, and that's how you get to product market fit. But I think also like learning the art of being a founder. I always tell people that whenever you're pitching, it's absolutely a performance, and the better you perform, the better the outcome of their performance. So that's kind of something I learned while I was going through when I was a startup founder. It was very hyper focused on, just getting to the next stage of funding, getting to the next stage of growth, and all the things, go to market, sales, fundraising, customer success, et cetera. I think as I more generally and anecdotally look back and after having conversations with founders, going through gBETA, the cohorts that you brought through, all the founders we have conversations with through Glassboard, I would say I'm reading the book, The 32 Letters That Rockefeller wrote his son. So it's really cool. If you haven't read the book, I highly suggest it. You can read it like one letter every morning. It's like 1 to 2 pages, which is plenty for my ADD. And the passage the chapter or letter I read this morning was all around action and how the only way you can be successful is if you take action. And so I think the biggest change for me as a founder, and now looking back on other founders, is that the founders who are successful are relentless at taking action and don't get planning confused with action. I think that there's times where you can start to make a plan, you can get obsessed with the plan, but if you get to the point where planning starts to feel like progress, you've started to fail. You actually need to go out and take action, and what's the outcomes of that, right? The first outcome of actually taking action is you're going to fail. Good. Right? What's the opposite reaction of failing? You're going to start to succeed. And so the only way to be successful is to actually start to fail, so you can figure out where the stove is hot. You don't go that way, you try this direction. And then once you start to find actions or motions that start to be successful, then you indicate on those even more. But it's only as a result of the actions that you take. And so I think that to answer your question, the founders who are more successful, the things that I look back on how we got All In acquired, even though that was a messy road to begin with, like the fact that we even got there was because we just were really relentless on taking action and just trying things and failing often, but also finding success in that process. So I think that's in general what my response would be.
I love to hear that, and I apply the fail fast, fail forward mindset in all my like relationships. I try to like really say to founders like just do it, like experiment, like. You cannot know what is the right route until you actually like try to go in several routes, and like maybe you hit the door with your full face in like 9 out of 10 doors, and then the 10th door is gonna open up. And I feel what you're saying about like the performance, like in all those pitches to investors, like I think you're trying to do like all these sprints, and some of them are gonna like you're just gonna have like nothing in your hands after the meeting, and you feel it's wasted energy, but instead is like reps that you're putting in your pitch, in your performance, and then you're gonna do like a great show when I think it's also serendipity. Like you're gonna do best when you're meant to do your best, when you're in front of the right investor, the right customer, and so I feel like that it's a great mindset to bring to the table, and something that also I think is important is that. Some founders focus on this like fail fast, fail forward, mainly with investors. I want them in the program. I want the founders to do the effort towards the customers. I always say like be investor ready through customer focus. It's interesting like that of course like the headlines and also the big numbers that you mentioned like with your fundraising like are the ones that people want to hear about, but at the end and tell me if I'm wrong, like you got acquired because of your customers, because of your technology, because of your distribution channels, like because you have proven that your supply, that your technology was desired by the market, and the market is made by people which are like consumers or people that work in a business, so like buyers in an organization. So I feel it's key that the founder like yes, think about strategically how to go to the next step. And of course, a big fundraising round is helping them to go to the next step. But also, like, the customer focus is key, because then between one stage and the other stage, you need to prove that you got to a certain amount of like new customers, you reach these like demand milestones, or market milestones, however you want to call them. So I think it's like fail forward on the customers. I think, to answer your question, like the most successful startups versus like the ones that didn't make it through, like there's a level of like customer obsession. I just to complete my background, after Kraft Heinz, I went to work for Amazon, for Mr. Jeff. I was actually in a startup within Amazon, which was called Amazon Pay. So we're like the fintech competitor to PayPal, and so like that customer obsession, like always in all your decisions, have the customer at your table. I was actually saying this to a startup this morning. Like when it comes to the marketplace, like there's a buyer, there is a seller, and they were actually like selling some physical product, regenerative inputs for soil, so biochar and others. And so there is this marketplace where there is, of course, a supplier, a seller, and then there is a buyer, and it's the buyer that opened the wallet and put the money on the table to purchase, to enable the transaction. And so like I think like Amazon, right? It's a marketplace where they have lots of services for the supplier. There's Amazon FBA, and there's lots of like care for the supplier, but at the end they're obsessed about the customer, and the customer is the one who pay. And so me, as a consumer that goes into Amazon, I feel like it's a platform I trust, because they are obsessed about the customer, which is the person that actually is like paying for like to purchase the product and enable all the flywheel of transactions on the platform. So customer obsession is something key for me.
No, of course. And I think that it's it kind of goes back to the point I was making on planning versus action. And I think that a lot of it is like there's a bit of friction when you go and talk to a customer. It doesn't always feel good. It's not always like a good outcome. Like they could say it sucks, which is like friction. And you might not want to hear that it sucks from the customer all the time. And so you might make some really elaborate plans on what you're going to be doing when you go out, like how we're going to go talk to customers. We're going to go and find the list of customers, or we're going to kind of talk about our strategy on how we're going to go about getting customers. But I think there's a little bit of a hesitancy. This is early stage, right? You don't actually progress unless you get better and better at, getting in front of customers and having conversations, and ultimately by that, having them drive your decisions forward on where the product goes, where the company goes, et cetera. And to your previous point, absolutely. The only reason we raised any capital is because we had traction. That was it. And halfway decent team and all the things that's included with that, but the traction was really what got people across the board. But it's the actions that you have to be okay with getting in front of the customer and them like not liking the product, or they don't buy, and we have a low conversion rate. How do we optimize for that? And I think like maintaining love for your customer is also extremely important. I found that it's sometimes possible to start resenting the customer. Like, oh, they didn't like the product that I made, or they all are like this way. And because you start to deal with the same kind of archetype of person. And I think as you like are doing even like founder-led sales or your product, you maybe have a higher churn rate than you would like to, and people are coming in on your intercom system and saying, I want to cancel my subscription. Like it's those moments where you have to realize that that's signal from the customer, but you have to still like love them and not just kind of feel that where like you're constantly getting rejected kind of thing. And I think that's always a good point. If at any point you're a founder and you realize that you're like completely you've fallen out of love with the customer, then it's probably time to consider like if you want to keep going and or how do you develop that love back. But to continue down the road with gBETA, I'm curious, do you guys have any upcoming cohorts, and what's that all about?
Yeah. So by the way, 100% about what you said about the customer. I love the conversation. We can continue it for hours. So back to our programming in Indiana, we are trying now to launch. We are launching a program. It's gonna start early June, so we're recruiting for the whole May in a very intense way. Actually, the early part of May, and it's a program that brings us together, us and Glassboard, because Glassboard is one of our amazing mentors in the program. Is at gBETA Industry 4, Smart Circular Manufacturing, and we are trying to look for Hoosier companies, so companies in Indiana, and with founders, with at least one founder that is based in Indiana, and as always, as gBETA is a free 7-week accelerator for legitimate startups and university affiliate innovators in smart physical manufacturing, IoT, Hardtech, data intelligence, materials, energy supply chain, cybersecurity, workforce management. And so, as I say at the beginning, we're looking for founders with early market traction, looking to acquire more customers and also approach investors, but also university affiliate innovators with strong patented or patent pending technologies ready to explore commercialization and funding pathways. And in this program, we want to bring those like industry 4 innovators and help them as a thinking partner, accountability coach, and execution buddy, coming back to the point of like they need not only think but also like execute and like walk and talk. I think it's how US people would say it. So yeah, it's like doing strategizing fundraising, but also like take action on the market, taking no's, taking rejections, and learning from those. I call this process like sales discovery. Like they are not doing customer discovery. Like customer discovery is like assessing if there is a problem and if a solution can fit the problem. I call it like more sales discovery. Like try to understand if there is willingness to pay from the customer and getting the hard no's from 90% of customers until they find the early adopter archetype and they can double down on that use case and start some sales.
Absolutely. No, and to your point, I think there's so much about if you're doing it the right way, you're having conversations with the customer, like you should know how they want to buy it from you. Like that's how when we say like talking to customers, like you should have. I just had the original founder, if you've ever heard of Yale and August Home or Locks. It's one of the largest consumer like lock companies for your homes and doors and access security and so forth. The founder of August Locks just so happened to be in Indianapolis for the Final Four. And we were going back and forth on him being on the Hardtech podcast. And so he said, hey, I'm just actually going to be in person. Why don't I just come on by? And of course, Grant wasn't in person. So I was like, man, this might be really technical and I'm not going to be very prepared, but we're going to do it anyways because this guy's here. And this is a guy who truly built one of the largest, most well-known, consumer lock companies in the world. And now absolutely has been a part of that and had built, strong relationships with Amazon, with Walmart, the platform that Walmart uses to drop off packages to people's homes inside their door. That was actually August Locks. That was him. He helped design that entire program. Actually, originally brought it up to Amazon, started working on deploying it through Amazon. Amazon at the nth hour told him no, we can't actually use you guys. We're going to use your competitors. I guess he walked right across the street and goes to give it to Walmart, and months later, now it's been launched. Anyways, he's now launching another lock company called Doma, which is a very fascinating company where he's making what sounds to be like the smartest smart door you've ever heard of. I think he's probably a little too late stage for
How smart?
So smart that it's like reading your Face ID and it opens for you and it closes for you. I think it's going to be revolutionary in the space of like accessibility tech. This guy has Silicon Valley. He's done well. And the first
Claude with doors, like Claude applied to Claude ChatGPT applied
effectively. There's like 6 products in a door, but the things that he did to validate the product, for example, was he actually like. Before he ever built a prototype, he was building it with conversations with the largest door manufacturers in the country, or actually in the world, rather. He's actually making an add-on to doors that you and I would buy, more luxury style doors, maybe for your front door, of course. And he was talking with them for the OEMs, like, hey, how can we actually build this product to be conducive to the way you're already making your doors? Right? And so that way he doesn't launch. He's made this incredible add-on to doors. But as it turns out, the largest door manufacturers in the country who would be his target customer say this product could never exist inside the door, creates a ton of sales friction. As it turns out, he had product market fit potentially, but he didn't because he wasn't talking to customers early enough. In this case, he was. And now his entire solution, and he said the first thing that I did was talk to those people before we started building the product. And so that's just kind of another anecdotal example of what it means to kind of consistently talk to your customers beforehand. I don't even know how I got on that topic, but I thought it was a fascinating story to kind of, again, give a real life example of what it means to like talk to your customers. Like that's what it means. Like you're literally designing it alongside with them. And that way you actually know you have a customer. And I think to that point with the founders that you're looking for the industry 4.0, at what stage are they really at? Is this idea stage? Is this I've got a little bit of traction, I've got a pitch deck? Like, what's like the gauge of founder that you're looking to have within the program?
I think your point is spot on, and I love anecdotal episodes, so probably I can share actually some anecdotes of the exact stage that I would love the founder to be in. So just to be broad, take a step back, we would like founders. So category A, founders with early market traction, which means that are founders that are already like talking to customers and have already some anecdotal stories of how they are interacting with those early customers, early adopter. I always struggle to make one or two examples because all these startups are like my kids. I like not like my children. I don't know. It feels like I don't want to like. I don't want to pick one over the others, but I'll try to do some examples.
You're allowed to have a favorite child. Everybody does.
Yeah, I can. I have in the back of my heart, but I don't. I refer them to all feel like my favorite child. Anyway, my favorite children. Anyway, so that's category A, and I can make an example. I'll break the rule and make an example that is very anecdotal for you to understand what means is early market traction, picking an hardware startup. The second category is like university-affiliated innovators that have a strong technology. So, just repeat, founders with the early market traction, talking to customers, LOIs, like pilots, or like university-affiliated innovators, maybe with no customers, but they have a strong technology, so like there is clearly economic moat given by their IP. And we had great collaborations with the University of Purdue, like the OTC Office of Tech Commercialization was super nice, and they introduced us lots of founders for this for the previous cohort, which was an agriculture cohort, and now out of the 5 founders, we got 3 founders from Purdue, and they have strong patents to Purdue. So if you give me a second, I'll make the example on both categories. So I would say, and make some Hardtech examples, so it's gonna be like very relevant to the podcast. So on the first category, founders with early market traction, 2 examples come to mind. The first one is a company that is able to scan trucks when they come back to the main warehouse when they need to park at night. And so through this smart sensing and physical AI, they're able to kind of capture what is the status of the truck. So if there was any accident or the status of the vehicle, of the wheel. And when this guy came to my cohort, he showed me the picture on the deck with the first cameras and sensoring installed at this first customer, at this first warehouse. And I said, okay, of course it's not like meaningful traction, but he's on the field, he's trying to sell, and because he was able already to install on a customer facility, on this like fleet management warehouse, it meant maybe he already had 10, 20, 30 sales conversations where he got 29 no's, and probably that one was the first yes after lots of no's. So already having something deployed, even if it's like with one early adopter, it's already very meaningful. Another example in this first category, to come back to your design partner, like the door example, we had this company that is producing very advanced lens for medical devices, for aerospace. And this company, like when they got in the program, they were still trying to launch to market their lens, their optics manufacturing machine, which is like very high technical, and they were fundraising for that, because for Hardtech you need to go through fundraising because you need to actually have the capital to put live these like super complex production machines. But they were already partnering with some lens companies that could not produce these very specific high-tech lenses. And so they were basically those high-tech lens companies were outsourcing to this more small startup that is in Indianapolis. Actually, not in Indianapolis. They are from Rossalman, and now they are in Bloomington. So I picked the wrong. The first one is in Indianapolis. So those guys are basically like they couldn't use their own production machine. They couldn't do things at scale, but they did things that don't scale. So they were closely partnering with those lens manufacturer to help them to fulfill that production gap that they had to produce this very specific one-time high-tech lenses for very specific use cases. And so, of course, this big lens company didn't want to kind of put together an infrastructure to produce these ad hoc one-time lenses, which maybe they were like smaller contracts. And so they were outsourcing it to this startup that didn't have the capacity to produce them at scale, but they could start to work to be the designing partner of those big lens companies. And also in this case, it shows that okay, you need to of course find capital to finalize this big and complex lens machine. But in the meantime, you can do lots of things that don't scale. You can work closely with the customer. You can be a design partner. You can be helpful to the customer. And even coming back to the example of these cameras in the warehouse to track the trucks coming in and out. Like this guy was able to be on field, was able to observe what were like the pain points of like the fleet manager when he was analyzing those trucks. And so like he was able, when he was deploying the solution, to further capture what were like the core features that this person needed, because actually, funny enough, this guy was not even technical. So he needed to prioritize the top features that this fleet manager needed, because of course he took to him some time to put together the Hardtech piece, software piece, and develop a solution. I call it I don't call it. It's the Pareto principle. Like there are 20% of features that bring the 80% of outcome. So as a founder, of course, you need to be resourceful. You have low resources. Like focus on the 20% of features that are actually solving 80% of the problem of your customers. Also in your communication, like there are 20% of features that delivered 80% of the ROI or ROP, return on purchase. So focus on those, because you don't have the capacity to nail down your whole product roadmap. You need to focus on the first bits that are actually producing all the value for the customer. That's the first angle, founders with early market traction. The second angle is university affiliated innovators. I got a couple of examples that comes to mind. There's a patent from Purdue that is useful as a useful technology for everyone in Indiana and the Midwest. They basically a camera that they can put behind vehicles. And so this camera is able to scan all the roads in a very quick way compared to, and also in a very economic way compared to the traditional methods. And they're able to figure out all the potholes that there are in a city. So like even for smaller cities, they're very good for smaller cities because they don't have so much capacity in terms of like economic capital to deploy to find people and services to scan all the potholes in a city, able to fill the pothole gap that there is on the ground. And so I think this kind of patent is clearly has a clear tangible impact. And this founder also has had market traction. So I think in this case, he was fitting both categories, but I think was a patent that was clearly so tangibly helpful that made so much sense to recruit in the program. So we were lucky that the founder already had got traction with some cities in Indiana. And another example, so I do like 2 examples per category. The second example on the university affiliation patent side, I'm probably gonna mention a company that is slightly more hard tech for ag. Is kind of basically produce a plant compound for for the gut to is a plant compound that enables the gut of animals that we eat to be healthier. So with poultry, with swines, and so if their gut is in a better status, we're eating healthier animals, and so we get more nourished by a good food. And of course, there's a lot of like production behind a plant compound from a very specific plant that can like support the gut of animals. But that's kind of it's actually this guy is close to patent. Actually, it's not patented yet. But of course, there is a level of like deep tech there that kind of can definitely serve the world, like us humans, by indirectly by helping animals to feel healthier. So these are the two examples per each category that I would like to bring to the table.
It's perfect. I love it. No, one of the things that you brought up that I thought I would like to talk more about or I just thought was important, was doing things that don't scale. I completely agree. And I think, what does that really mean, right? It's like, it's actually doing something that a large company probably just couldn't do. And that kind of gives you the strategic angle with the company. And one of the mistakes that can happen sometimes for founders, certainly happened to me, I've seen it happen in other cases as well, is when founders will try to position themselves as a big company. You know, like, oh, let me CC my entire team. And it's like a bunch of fake emails and it's just literally just them, right? And that's actually the worst way to compete with a large competitor. One of the best ways is like if they need to know that you're nimble. And usually the early adopters that are willing to use your platform at the startup and early stage actually want the flexibility and the access to you as the founder or the smaller team to really solve the problems that they have that they couldn't otherwise just go and get for the large enterprise, conglomerate who would never bend to them because they're just a small, incremental revenue number for them. While to you as a startup founder, they're your customer number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, 10. And I just want to kind of speak to that on. So what that means is you can actually go about getting those customers differently as well. And it sounds like in some of the companies you talked about, obviously traction is extremely important. The propensity to either want to sell and take activities and go out and do the thing is important. But how you go about that can actually be a little bit different than the larger companies do. And so just kind of keep that in the back of your mind when it comes from a go-to-market perspective. And I feel like that's where I developed a lot of that on the go-to-market side. Is there's so much like take advantage of like behavioral science. There's different ways that you can go about it where when you get larger, maybe you couldn't do it, but you can certainly do it whenever you're smaller and do it because it's actually a huge advantage that other people can't. So you kind of differentiate yourself there. No, Davide, this has been fantastic. I think we got through most of the docket here. One of the last questions I always love to ask on a podcast is what advice, and you've already dropped so many pieces of advice, would you give to someone who's also running an accelerator program? I was going to ask like hardware founders. We've done plenty of advice there. What makes a accelerator program like gBETA successful, and what would be your advice if someone wanted to start one on their own?
Starting an accelerator on your own is like it's a challenge. Like it's definitely a long road, kind of a founder's journey. But like on the accelerator side, so yeah, probably I think probably accelerators, the real value they provide is, I call it like being the second wife of a founder. Like you need to be there for them. You need to be on a text base, the same relationship that the founder should have with the customer, like on a text basis, and like the customer should really like trust you. I feel the same with the founders. Like I need founders to really trust me, and also like trust the process that we like bring a generator. There is a key part that I love founders to focus that I think probably summarize our like what I try to deliver to them at the end of the day, which is kind of a table that I hope they can always have in front of their mind, which is called like financing and milestone. And so it's and I hope all the accelerators, and I think all the accelerators have the goal, at least like the main one, Techstars, Y Combinator, they all have the goal to make the founder fundraise, but what's the purpose of that fundraising? So I would say at 2 levels, strategy level, execution level. At the strategy level, like the thing we're trying really to make it clear is that the financing, those big rounds, comes from what do you need the money for, first of all, and do you actually need the money? So like, look first of all at your cash flow, see your burn rate, see your runway, and then like, that also have on the other end, like what are your demand milestones? So like how you're gonna approach the market in terms of like distribution channels, customer acquisition channels, like supply, which means like how you build your technology, your product. If it's Hardtech, of course, is kind of a even more difficult game than like shipping software.
Certainly.
And so like once you have figured out, okay, how much is the inflow outflow in my bank statement? So like let's forget about like the profit and loss statement, income statement, like inflow outflow in your bank account, and then like the milestones that you need to get in order for you to serve as a company, to serve your investors, to progress and provide like value to you, to your customers, to your employees. Like once you saw like inflow and outflow and milestones, then you start to combine them together and try to understand, okay, what are my financial needs, and how can I actually get the money to match my financial needs. And so that's what I like to do on a strategic level, that I think all accelerators should do, is like really like try to plan like the top line, how you're gonna drive and grow the company, and what are like and only fundraise in relationship to that. So that's the first piece. And the second piece, as you said, is like the execution. I didn't want to mention it first because I want to add an additional original piece, but the execution is key. I mean, once you have the milestone plan, it's not something that you need to have on paper. It's something that you need to execute on. And so like have like, I call it like OKRs, objective, key results, and actions. Like have those objective and key results clear on a yearly basis, but then like action. And so like each week, gather with your team, or in my case, gather with the cohort, and establish, okay, like the past week, what has worked, what was a challenge, what was a failure, and is it worth to iterate on that failure? Is it a micro failure that is worth like trying again, or is a micro failure that should inform the decision to look somewhere else? And then like once you establish what worked in the past week, then establish your plan, but in a written way in front of your co-founders, and in my case, the whole cohort, and then like execute on that plan. And so then after a year, you can look at this kind of, you can look at your overall objective and your results, see how much you meet them, and also you can see how much you're on track on the financing and milestone piece. So it's kind of, I call it like top down and bottom up. So like top down, you have this like one monthly session, one each month session where you establish your top down goals. But then like on your day to day, it's like bottom up execution. Like you quickly look at what you established top down, but then like you execute every day. You bang your head on your door. Like it's so beautiful to get no's. Like I found fascinating like to take no's because it means you have tried. So like also for accelerators, like make founders get no's, and there should be a culture of like accountability to get no's. Like when sometimes you're with your friends and like I don't know you make the challenge. Okay, we approach like three new people, and who gets the highest no's gets free dinner. Like something like that. They can create like really an accountability to get as many no's as possible, because then out of 10 no's you're gonna get for sure a yes. Maybe 100 no's you get a yes. What's your statistics about like the no's and the yeses when you were a startup?
It always just depends on what you're selling and what angle you got the no from. But no, I completely agree. Ultimately, it comes down to action. You got to make a plan. You got to set it. You got to take it to action and then execute, as consistently as you possibly can, right? You don't have to just go ahead and burn it at both ends every single, like for a week straight and then just like kill yourself. Just incremental progress every single day, executing the OKRs that you have, and then look back in a quarter and see what happened.
Yeah, and just I think you raised a great point. Like you should get a no, but then it's so important that like after the no, you ask yourself, okay, what was wrong? How can I improve? Like the no, it's meaningless unless you really understand the value of that no and you get the learning from that no. Sometimes I sometimes dance, like I do salsa and bachata dancing around Indianapolis. Now I just went to Houston to do a bachata workshop, and I like to try new moves, and sometimes they fail. And the important thing for me is like understand, okay, why did the move fail? I'm happy to fail as long as I understand why did I fail doing that move. Or I try something new with the cohort. Maybe it doesn't work. I try to reach out to some investors and answer me, okay, why? Like, it's not just important the no, but it's important the why behind the no. So like focus on action, then the outcome, and then like analyze the root cause behind the outcome. Like I was mentoring the NSFA Corps, which is a great program offered by National Science Foundation in different universities, and they have the rule of the 5 whys when you mentor a startup, or when or also for the founder itself. So like ask yourself like why 10 time. Like for example, you received a no. Why did you receive a no? The customer was unhappy. Why was the customer unhappy? Because they had a bad day. Why they had a bad day? Because maybe they had another problem in their manufacturing plants that was related to your solution. Okay, very interesting. So why are they struggling with that pain in the manufacturing floor? And maybe then you're gonna discover that maybe they don't care about the problem you're trying to solve with your solution. Maybe they care about something completely different. For example, like I get some sales pitches about people that want to sell me solutions to get better my accelerator. And what I really need is, for example, what I really needed now, I think a bit less, but what I really needed in the first 2 years I joined the accelerator is like how to find more founders. So everyone was trying to tell me how to run better accelerators, but what I really needed is like how to source better, high quality founders in a quick way, because recruitment timelines sometimes very tight. And so like it's very good to understand what is the person struggling with in a deeper level, because that's where you actually can really elaborate a solution that is really fitting their needs.
Absolutely. Everybody, this is the Hardtech Podcast. I'm your host, DeAndre Hericus. Davide, thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you.
See you guys next week.